From as far back as I can remember going through elementary school, my first exposure to law enforcement was seeing Adam 12, Kent McCord, and Reed Malloy, who ultimately became my idols. And as a result of that, for as far back as I could remember, I wanted to be a police officer. In growing up in East Los Angeles, I came from a large family, traditional Hispanic family of 8. And we didn't have a whole lot. My mom worked as a seamstress. My father worked as a machinist. And most of the time they were gone. We went to school, got home, and rarely saw my father. At least I rarely saw my father. But my mom was, for the most part, no disrespect to my father, but for the most part brought us up. And she was the one that provided us with the strong moral foundation and religious foundation, Catholicism. And ultimately that led to us, myself and my brothers, being brought up in what was roughly a difficult location to live in East Los Angeles around gang violence, but we were able to grow through that. In applying for law enforcement almost immediately after high school, it was a more difficult process than I had anticipated. As it is today, in order to become a police officer, you have to have a significantly good background, you have to have good credit, you have to have good driving history, as well as good moral character. And you also have to be able to explain why you want to be a police officer and why you have chosen that career as a profession. I went through the interview process with the Los Angeles Police Department as well as with Pasadena Police Department, and initially I was rejected from each of the 2 applications because at the time they felt I was too young. I had applied at 20 years of age. Even though you were able to apply at 20 years of age, they felt that I was still not mature enough. Nonetheless, I was not deterred, and I continued applying with the Los Angeles Police Department, and ultimately I did complete their process and was selected to start the academy in September of 1985. And despite the initial setback, I didn't give up in my desire to be a police officer, and perseverance is the most important thing that I would encourage everyone who's watching this video to maintain. You got to expect that you're going to be told no in your profession and your chosen career, not once but multiple times. And you have to maintain the perseverance and continuing to go after your dream to ultimately achieve it. If success is too easy, you tend to take it for granted. So for those of you that have not gotten what you believe you should have gotten early on, do not be deterred and keep going forward, and it will be that much sweeter when you succeed in your ultimate goal of whatever that may be. I would say for the most part my struggles were very similar to my friends that I grew up with in the East Los Angeles area. Most of my friends, as well as myself, were able to avoid becoming involved in the gang life, if you will. That was very prevalent at the time. I grew up in the 70s and 80s in East Los Angeles. And it was not uncommon for us to see regular gang violence through our street and in our neighborhood. We knew many of the gang members. We learned to avoid the temptation that some of them brought by in trying to join the gang life. And we kind of maintained our own little group. And as a result of that, we were able to play off of each other in supporting each other and avoiding the negative impact of the environment we were growing in. My mother has always been extremely supportive of any career or endeavor that we had, although she had always been concerned about the potential dangers of becoming a police officer. She did try to discourage me in being a police officer because of the danger of the law enforcement profession, but in the end she was supportive of my career, or my chosen career, and my goals, and she has always been there for me since then. As a young teenager, I played baseball and football at the local park, City Terrace Park in East Los Angeles. And the coaches that were there to lead us, if you will, on the team were a significant help in maintaining our focus and being competitive, but at the same time working in a team environment. So if I had to pick someone that was most influential besides my parents, it would be the team coaches in baseball and football. Being very young, when I first decided to be a police officer, it was very common to see the sheriffs who patrolled the East Los Angeles area where I lived to be involved in some sort of police action with individuals that we knew. But I never got the sense that being a Latin Hispanic growing up in East Los Angeles was going to be a deterrence to me in my ultimate goal of being a police officer. I was very fortunate in the sense that my chosen path was not hindered by the possibility of someone or others being allowing racial motivation to impact their decision to allow me to move forward or not in my chosen profession. So in my case, I can't say that being a Hispanic or Latinx member was a hindrance. I never really realized that the outside world may have harbored some willingness to hinder the Hispanic lifestyle or community in succeeding. I was never witness to that until really late in my life, and this was after I had already become a police officer that I first started seeing some areas where there may have been some bias. But for the most part, in my upbringing, I didn't see very much of that. As I moved through the ranks, I do recall some times where there was some bias in selection for promotions and otherwise. I'm not sure that they were racial based as much as connections. One thing I can say that I've learned in my adult life is you truly have to build that support from other people, and you truly have to build that connection with other people in your profession or chosen career. If you're the type of person that does not like to make friends or make connections with others, you're going to have a difficult time in your chosen profession. I can't say it was helpful or harmful. Again, I may have been in the minority in this area, but I really didn't have a difficult time growing up. I think I was fortunate that the circle of friends that I had, the deep support from the family, really kind of sheltered me from those outside incidents that some of us have heard or even experienced in their own lives. But I was fortunate that I didn't have much difficulty in moving through my career aspirations and ultimately becoming what I am today, and that's a chief of police of a law enforcement agency in Southeast Los Angeles that I'm now able to give back to. I think the most important technique that I can recommend to all of you is we all have different personalities, but you have to be willing to meet people halfway. You have to be willing to build bridges with others that sometimes your inner instincts tell you this is not somebody I really want to talk to or engage with. The fundamental reality is that unless you're willing to build those connections, unless you're willing to work through differences, you're always going to have a difficult time in life. Those people that are able to have a willingness to reach out to others despite the initial inclination that you may not like them, and try to work through those differences to ultimately get something for the best of the organization or the goal that you're trying to attain, you'll be more successful in the future. So I encourage you not to forget your family, not to forget your close friends. Pick your head up from time to time. Don't look into the phone every opportunity, and try to spend some time away from that phone. I am as guilty of it as others. I carry 2 phones, and my wife is constantly telling me to put the phones down. You know, prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, it was not uncommon for me and my family to go to a restaurant and for my wife to immediately point out that myself and my kids were looking into our phones and not having a simple discussion. And I had to remind myself, but now that COVID-19 has come to pass, it gets you to a position now where you got to reflect on what you've been doing over the past few years and to rethink what's important in life. And I will hope that all of you, although I understand the need for social media, I would encourage you to spend a little bit more time looking up and not at your phone.